Justice has been served. Today we prove that no one is above the law. No matter how rich, powerful, or politically connected you are, everyone must play by the same rules. We have a responsibility to protect the integrity of the marketplace. And for years, Donald Trump engaged in deceptive business practices and tremendous fraud. Donald Trump falsely, knowingly, inflated his net worth by billions of dollars to unjustly enrich himself, his family, and to cheat the system. Donald Trump may have authored the art of the deal, but he perfected the art of the steal. Because there cannot be different rules for different people in this country, and former presidents are no exception. This decision is a massive victory for every American who believes in that simple but fundamental pillar of our democracy, that the rule of law applies to all of us.
State that's going bust. It's a state that's going bust because everybody's leaving. And it's all headed up by Biden, who's destroying our...
Wow. A lot of emotion. There's a lot of emotion in this room. Thank you. Thank you.
Everything must go!
Make an offer! Make an offer!
Everything must go!
Cigarette money from prison! Cigarette money from prison! Help the guy out!
Clock for sale, guys. Somebody wants a clock for sale.
Clock!
Trump is always for sale! Trump is always...
Make us an offer! We can't refuse!
Everything must go!
Everything must go!
To the disgraced, one term, twice impeached, quadruply indicted, ex-President's Day liquidation blowout! Everything must go!
Welcome to the National Newspaper Publishers Association's Let It Be Known, and the grift of all grifts continues after Donald Trump was hit with a massive fine, $350+ million. This comes on the heels of him being socked with an $80+ million judgment in the sexual harassment or sexual assault of the writer E. Jean Carroll. We got Make It Plain with us, Mark Thompson. Thanks for joining us this morning, Mark. How are you?
Fine. How are you this morning, Stacey? I see you got trying to look a little like me. You got a little dirt on your face.
Yeah, well, when you try to
I haven't seen you
imitate,
with a beard. I haven't seen you with a beard before.
when you can't go wrong if you're trying to imitate Mark, Make It Plain. But Mark, we're gonna get into all of the grift with the sneakers, but Letitia James, of course, really, she came last year to the CBCF's legislative conference, annual legislative conference, and she said that she had, at that point, she said she wanted to bring New Yorkers home $250 million, but she got about $100+ million more than that. But before we go there, I want to start. I know you're up to speed on this. I saw your buddy, your homie, the one of the Justins, pointing out in a video these Nazis in Nashville. What's going on in Tennessee with the Nazis in Nashville, Mark?
Well, I have not talked with Justin. I saw his post like everyone else did. I'm not sure, frankly. I need to do a dive into that. I'm not sure what it is about Nashville, whether maybe they're doing a Nazi tour around the country, but I'm not sure what that is about. But this stuff is getting crazy, man. People out here in these streets trying to bring something like that back. Why? What is going on? And we do know where it comes from. We know that this is a resurgence because as we see what's going on all over the world with this right-wing behavior, this right-wing conservatism, this ultra-nationalism, and Trump is a part of that. He's a representative. He's a spokesperson for that. And that is becoming more and more in vogue. We see it in Europe. We see it in other parts of the world. This is a dangerous place. And I'll say this too. and I know we're going to get into this. We see for the first time in history, people around the world speaking out en masse, really for the first time en masse, on behalf of the Palestinian people, trying to hold the Zionist regime in Israel responsible. But then you got these other people running around with swastikas.
Yeah.
So it's like something doesn't quite add up. And so, I would say that, and I think all well-meaning people can do more than one thing. As a friend of mine used to say, two things can be true. We can hold the Israeli regime accountable, but we can also decry what, in many respects, created the Israeli regime, and it's this kind of anti-Semitism. Both problems. Both are problems. Both have to end. So yeah, I've got to do a deep dive, because that's real random, man. Nashville's not that Nashville hasn't been racist. Not the Nashville is in the South, as many know. I grew up there, but this swastika neo-Nazi piece, that's a little fresh. That's a little new. Like,
this was
that's not something you see. That's not something you ever see every day in Nashville, and particularly, I mean, Nashville's not been known as a headquarters, to my knowledge of this.
Right.
So yeah, it's got to be some cure. But look, that may be because of the Justins too, because what they were able to do, the atmosphere that needs to be created. See, people don't understand what happened to the Justins was also a move by right-wing conservatives in the legislature in Nashville to mimic Trump. It backfired, because what happens, a lot of these younger white boys think they're Trump, and they aren't. And they step out there like that and they get jammed up. They expect to have the following. DeSantis, for example, didn't go too well for him. Cameron Sexton, Speaker of the House in Tennessee, didn't go too well for him. And the Republicans said, man, you know what you did? You just elevated these dudes to international celebrities. And then it gets on TV, it gets on the news. So they knew they were gonna get some attention by doing it. They got it. Sometimes we may need to take a second look at that. Should people even be given the kind of coverage?
Yeah.
I'm not talking about you in particular. I'm not talking about you in particular, Stacey, because we're talking about it. But some of the other media who blows this kind of stuff up, maybe that's something we need to reconsider.
Well, Metro Nashville police said they were initially monitoring some type of demonstration, but later said it hadn't appeared to materialize. But videos and photos quickly began to circulate online, and then finally there was a statement from the Jewish Federation of Greater Nashville, which said that a group of Nazis decided to publicly intimidate and harass by displaying their hateful imagery throughout the city. And the police acknowledged that there was some sort of, in other words, the police are downplaying it. The authorities in Nashville are downplaying it as some sort of small outburst, if you will, instead of a full-blown demonstration. But as one of our viewers, Power 96, points out, they've done this in other places like Houston as well. And speaking of our viewers, Mark, I want to highlight Southbound 3000, who says that it's good to see you, Mark. He says, I started listening to you from channel 169, The Power.
Oh, that's years ago, 2001. The Power went on the air. We were the first. Make It Plain was the first show to go on the air. It was after 9/11, and that's when satellite radio was first getting started. We didn't even have subscribers yet. I had to talk to myself for almost a year until XM radio got subscribers. But back to the Nazi piece. And let me say this. I want to say this the right way. Nazism, anti-Semitism rears its ugly head, and those who would support the state of Israel use that to justify the Israeli regime's bombing of civilians. Bomb the Nazis. The innocent civilians, and of course I'm being metaphorical, but the innocent civilians in Palestine are not these dudes in Nashville or wherever they are in the country. Go get them. That's your real enemy. Go get them. And not to mention, I mean, Hamas probably is too, but y'all created Hamas. Hamas has been funded by the Israeli regime as a foil against a two-state solution. So I just want to put that out there.
Yeah.
You know, that's why two things can be true. We can fight for the lives of Palestinian civilians and also fight against Nazism, because those Palestinian civilians are not these individuals, are not these people right here.
Yeah, and switching gears, Mark, as we said at the top, Letitia James has successfully
Wait a minute, hold
won.
it. Wait a minute. Since you're reading comments, I'm looking at a comment from Oren G. Swag Sports.
That's Power 96.
It's part of the police department is full of Nazis, and not in Nashville. Do we know that? I mean, are you speaking on? If you know that, let us know, because I wasn't aware of that in Nashville. Okay, I'm sorry, Stacey. Go ahead.
Yeah, no problem. And he tends to bring up some facts that, and I say facts because they later prove to be true. So, but we don't. We can't. We haven't independently verified that. No. And he's saying yes. But nonetheless, let's talk about this situation with Letitia James and what she was able to accomplish. You talk about weird stuff happening this year with the presidential election and just in politics in general. So Trump, the who's gonna get the Republican nomination for president? He's gonna be the Republican nominee. There's probably a less than 1% chance that Nikki Haley or anyone else at this point can come in and pull off some sort of upset. Last week he was hit with a $80+ million judgment in the sexual assault. That was the second sexual assault judgment against him in the E. Jean Carroll matter.
Right.
So he's into her for over $90 million. And he must put up $90+ million in order to appeal that particular verdict. In this particular case, he must put up, Mark, in excess of about $400 million to appeal. A lot of questions we can go into on this. Where's the money coming from? And he seems to try and give us a little bit of an answer, as he was booed in Philadelphia yesterday or over the weekend anyway, with his Trump sneakers that he's selling $350 a pair.
Right.
So, where's the money coming from? Number one. I mean, this guy, and I said at the top, the grift of grifters, right?
Right.
The sneakers, something that looks like it'll fall apart the moment someone tries to put it on their feed. And he's looking for his supporters to bail him out.
Yeah, and I don't know if they'll be able to do it. That's a lot of money. $500 million. That's what we're kind of cumulatively with all the different fines and cases. That's kind of where we're going. We're just about there to $500 million. Who can afford? What? No billionaire can afford to pay $500 million.
Let me just real quick put that in perspective for some people.
All right, come on.
When Michael Jackson died, he was $500 million in debt. Now he's Michael Jackson, right? And so in the years since, his estate has done the job of all jobs. They've turned that around because he's Michael Jackson. He has something to sell, right? They have made a couple of $1 billion since Michael's death. Donald Trump is not Michael Jackson, right? So here's the thing. Is Trump? Are you going to allow someone? Are you going to vote someone into office $500 million in debt? What kind of position does that put the country in? Because now he's $500 million in debt. You see where I'm going with this, Mark?
So, but that's why the Biden campaign needs to be very, very clear. The Biden-Harris campaign needs to say in these words, you are electing a man who only wants to become president so that he can pardon himself. He doesn't want to lead. He has no policy other than white supremacy. He wants to pardon himself and institute white supremacy and neo-Nazism himself. Period. Period. It's what you have to keep saying and have to keep repeating so that people get it.
And last month, a congressional ethics committee found that he traded favors with foreign governments, right?
Right.
To the tune of about $7 million. He's $500 million in debt. What type of deal will he make with, say, a China or Russia or Saudi Arabia or anyone else to try and erase that debt?
Yeah, you're right.
Isn't that a
And that's a
concern?
good point. That's a good point. And that's that. I didn't think about that. That's a very good point, because what you have there is an incentive to do just that and to make deals so that he can try to get some of that, recoup some of that money or pay some of his bills. Now, again, he may not have to do that if he's able to pardon himself. I'm not sure how that works civilly.
The civil.
Can you pardon yourself?
Can you pardon the civil
Okay.
verdict?
Right.
A federal criminal verdict, you can.
Right. So
Civil,
yeah, so the money. So he's got to get the money. Yeah, he's got to hit folk up for that money. You're right.
Yeah,
You're absolutely right.
which is interesting, because we all, I know I was one in the beginning of this case with Letitia James. Like, okay, why isn't this a criminal case, right? And I still say why it should be a criminal case, because the judge himself called it criminal. He said the judge's words was massive business fraud. His CFO did some time behind this, right? But here she puts him on the hook, regardless of whether he wins the presidency or not.
Yeah. No, and that's important. I think too, we got to remember with two things. First of all, Donald Trump could have lived out the rest of his life as the celebrity, fake millionaire, billionaire, whatever he was, being on television and everything. He could have just lived that out. All right. He allowed Barack Obama at the White House Correspondents' Dinner to bait him into running for president.
Mm-hmm.
That was part of his ego, because Obama literally clowned the man at the White House. Looking back on it, he probably shouldn't have done that, because that's one of the things that enabled him to run for president. And so he runs for president. And I don't care who you are, it's just, when you run for public office, a lot of times your secrets do come to light. And that's why, folks, when y'all wonder why this person ain't running, some of y'all say, oh, why did this person run against Biden? Why didn't this person do it? I'm telling y'all, everybody can't do that. You feel me, Stacey? Some of y'all shouting, folks, oh, why don't this person run? Leave them people alone, because they may not be able to. Okay. All right. So let's just keep that in mind. So you have that. He should have just stayed where he was, and he wouldn't even be in this position. He wouldn't be losing all of this money. But what makes it even worse, see, when that's what attracted people to him, because he was this celebrity. And even the poorest of the poor and the most snaggletooth, redneck white folk who love him, right? That's part of the attraction. People like people who are celebrities and who are rich and have their names on buildings and come out of New York.
Right.
Once you take that shine off of someone, then people don't think the same of you. Wait a minute, you're not New York anymore. No, I mean, so for example, he's spending all his time in Florida. Donald Trump would not be who he was if he was just a Floridian. Mm-hmm. It's the cachet of New York and Trump Tower, not Mar-a-Lago. That's secondary. Mm-hmm. But now you out of New York, man. You're finished in New York. All of that is gone. All those, whatever buildings are left that still have your name on them, that's going to come down. You are a ruined individual, and your reputation is shot. So I think, man, it's human nature. I think people kidding themselves to think that folk just going to continue to be loyal, and push this guy up, and also help him come up with $500 million. Because it's human nature. People get tired. Everything has a shelf life. You are a literal commodity. for sale, a
So,
product, and everything has a shelf life.
Mark, the question though is, aren't there campaign finance rules, whereas he cannot use campaign money to pay these debts?
Of course, of course. I mean, I'm sure that but I don't put it past them to try to see what loopholes they can get around.
Right, right.
But there really are issues, and you're right. He may be even being said. Having said that, I wouldn't put it past him. Also, I think we also can establish that he and the people around him, Stacey, are incredibly stupid. So even when they try it, he might get himself in some more legal trouble. See, if he had a friend say, "Hey, dude, listen, you fall back because you're about to break another law," and you are no longer the white boy who is Teflon, who's not going to get charged with a crime. You are the poster child for the white boy who's going to get charged with a crime, and that's what you're doing.
I want to talk more about that too. First, let me just mention Big John Dolphin, my homie. He says, Mark, he's looking for you to replace the Black Eagle.
No, that won't happen. First of all, nobody can replace the Black Eagle. Joe and I were friends, but no, that won't happen.
It won't happen. I know John did listen to the Black Eagle on a regular basis. John is an NPR type guy too, so so there he is, big smooth. Now, Chris Cuomo. Here's the thing, Mark. Maybe you can make some sense out of some of this anyway, and because it's hard to make sense out of nonsense, right? But so we talk often about Ted Cruz and Little Marco Rubio and folks like that, Tim Scott, who is a joke in himself, with the fact that Nikki Haley was the one who brought him to the dance, and he turns on her to go with Trump. But Chris Cuomo, Trump was instrumental in destroying the Cuomo legacy, the Cuomo dynasty, if you will. Chris Cuomo is now saying that Trump is unfairly targeted. Trump is the most
Really?
targeted president. Yeah, he tweeted yesterday in response to something he had said on his News Nation show, and he doubled down on it when Stephen Colbert had made a point about the trials of Trump, and Cuomo said that what's happening to Trump is pretty much, and I'm going to paraphrase as I dive in and find the exact quote, but he pretty much said it's unfair. No other president has had to endure what Trump, or former president has had to endure what Trump has. And here's his words. He says, if it's Biden, Trump, look, for me, again, this is a direct quote now from Chris Cuomo. Again, we survived a Trump administration. Would we survive another one? Yes. I don't think there's any greater risk to America with him than with Biden. And for people who are now going to attack me and say, what are you talking about? Trump is like this crazy man. Look, as Patrick says, whoever Patrick is, the data's the data. Nobody was trying to kill us when Trump was president in a way that they're not now. And then over the weekend, he added more by saying that no other candidate, this is a quote, has ever been put through the ringer as Trump. What is going on, Mark?
Yeah, I didn't know about that. I don't know what Chris Cuomo was doing. This is Chris Cuomo.
This is Chris.
Yeah, so he's on that conservative channel now.
Yeah.
So that may be what his paymaster is encouraging him to do. He's on that. He's on that
Well,
conservative channel.
is he selling himself to Fox News? Is he trying to get over there?
Could be. That's good. That's a good observation, Stacey.
I mean,
That's
he's
a good
trying to
observation.
follow
He
the
may
money.
very well be trying to get on Fox News. Yeah.
We talked about grifters. I mean, look,
Yeah.
it's hard to imagine someone like Chris, who at CNN was probably making as much as $10 million a year. You remember they poached him from ABC, and so they had to make him a considerable offer, and which they did. And then the big fallout from his brother's situation, and he wound up finally at News Nation, which is really still pretty much a fledgling operation. So I can't imagine that they're paying him anywhere close to what he could make with CNN or Fox.
Yeah, um, um, yeah, News Nation ain't nothing, and he's trying to make it back. I mean, in a nutshell, and nobody's checking for Chris Cuomo, frankly. So a lot of times when people post this kind of stuff, they are, um, they're trying to get clicks and likes and attention.
Clout chasing.
Yeah, clout chasing is what it is. But he's
So,
not about nothing.
so you have situations like that. And I mentioned Marco Rubio and others, but then you have this on the Democratic side, Mark, Rashida Tlaib, the Democrat out of Michigan, if I said her name correctly. If not, you'll correct me. She's urging Democrats in Michigan to vote against President Biden in the primary. Um, she might have her reasons, but is this how you want to go about this at this point, Mark?
Well, I think they're trying to do what was done in Nikki Haley in Nevada. I think it's a protest vote. And it's the bed that Biden and his campaign have made for themselves, Stacey. You have a significant number of Arab Americans, Palestinian Americans, pro-Palestinian voters in that Michigan demographic. Can't do that. Can't allow Gaza to be bombed and not deal with that. I mean, we talk about the Democratic Party taking all of our constituencies for granted. When do we stand up? When do we push back and say, hell no? So I'm not knocking that. I think the movement is to get people to vote undecided, so they can feel it. See, two things have happened in recent days. Well, this is not a new thing. We know this is happening, but we also know, Biden goes down to the AME Church in South Carolina where the tragedy happened. He's in the AME Church, then walks out there, and the AME bishops vote not just for a ceasefire, but to end all funding to Israel. Then you have the Michiganders threatening to, he's got to see and hear this and act accordingly. Otherwise, this is what this is beginning to become. This is 1968 deja vu. You had Democratic incumbent caught up in a war, and because of that war, he had to drop out. And not just simply because of the war, but because Dr. King was leading an anti-war movement. So anybody today who is involved in an anti-war effort against what's going on in Gaza is repeating and continuing the work of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And any president who is not listening to that is repeating the same mistake as Lyndon Johnson.
Well, it's going to be a real bloody election. Rob Double M is watching on YouTube, who says, "Wake up, Biden voters! It is not just Chris Cuomo saying this. Arabs, Black, grassroots, and progressive voters are trashing Biden as well." And then you have members of the Democratic Party who are not totally satisfied with the Biden's leadership. We saw the age issue come up. That it's interesting with the age issue. I've always said about that is that we never talk about Trump's age, and he's only a couple of years younger than Biden. And also, the one thing I noticed about Trump, and this is not to put one over the other, but the one thing I noticed about Trump is that, and someone else pointed this out, and when I went back to look at some various videos of Donald Trump and various statements of Donald Trump, Mark, there's no depth whatsoever to Donald Trump. There's nothing sophisticated about Donald Trump. Is that his lure? Is that what causes some people to latch on that he's just unintelligent?
Well, it's kind of like W. Bush. He was goofy and unintelligent. Somebody you have a beer with. People, some people relate to that on their level, and that's that.
Bush was a little bit likable. Trump is angry
No,
all
he
the time.
wasn't. No, he wasn't. He wasn't like Bush. Bush was hell too. We got to be careful too about allowing Trump to um, clean up the reputation of some of these other people. Bush was horrible, and we knew that going in, and he didn't even win that election. But I think what we have is the contempt for what they would call the academic elite. And people like Bush and Trump were the opposite of that because they aren't academic. And ironically, even though Trump is supposedly a billionaire, he's tricked people into believing he's not part of the elite when he really, really is. But I think that's the lure, the plain spokenness, all of that. I think that's part of the allure.
Yeah, and then listen, we're here at NMPA and the Black Press. We have ignored to this point the elephant in the room, which reared its head again over the weekend. Dr. Chavis, of course, is also affiliated with No Labels. No Labels is planning. It looks like they'll be running a third-party campaign. They have said from the outset that they believe that there are better choices than what is available. They did not want to see a Biden-Trump rematch. They don't think it's good for the country. A third party, Mark, many argue is going to take from Democrats. Dr. Chavis argues that is not. Third parties tend to do what, Mark? I mean, let's look at history and facts only. Who do they take from?
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but in '92, did they not take from um, Daddy Bush?
Well, 92 was Ross Perot, right?
Yeah.
And he was a Texan. And yes, he took from Senior. He did. He absolutely did.
So I mean, but not to your point isn't important. I mean, we know that they do take away. Dr. Chavis, well, he was on MSNBC this weekend, and I listened very carefully to what he said. Now, first of all, I'm not convinced that there will be a no labels ticket. I think part of no labels allure is to say things. I mean, because they were talking about Joe Manchin at one time and other folk like that. I don't think, and I don't think they're going to be to get on the ballot in many of the states. It's just that late.
Mhm.
But what Dr. Chavis said is there would be a unity ticket with the Republican and the Democrat. Now, if that's true,
Okay.
then, and I'm not saying I mean I don't think no labels should run anything. But if they were to run with a Democrat with a Republican on the ticket, knowing now that there are a number of Republicans who are with Nikki Haley and looking for an off ramp with someone other than Trump, that may not hurt the Democrats as much as we might think it would. Again, I don't think they should run anybody. I don't think that that's going to make a big difference at all. But if in fact there's going to be a Republican, but I don't know if they have anybody. I mean, it's hard to
Oh,
keep that a secret. I
and
don't know
isn't
that
the
anybody's going to
idea
surface.
isn't the idea of having a pairing a Republican with a Democrat? It's not a bad idea, right? I mean, when you're thinking about, and I'm not just talking specifically about no labels. I'm just talking in general because don't you want bipartisanship ideally?
I think you do, but and there are ways to do that, but at the national level, we're just not there yet. And
No, we're not. Why not?
And we got to get there. And that's mostly because of the Republicans. Somebody put in chat, what about no labels run Nikki Haley? Yeah, do that. I don't have a problem with that because that might take some votes away from Trump. But anything that helps Trump, we can't have.
David Youngblood believes it's a horrible idea, he says, and it will ensure Biden's defeat.
To run Nikki though, David. I mean, if you're running a candidate that is gonna pull votes away from Donald Trump, that doesn't. It just depends on who the candidate is.
Yeah.
See, the other thing we got to think about is RFK and whether or not that hurts Biden. Yeah, that's too early to tell. So I don't know.
Yeah.
So these are some. We've never been in a situation like this. We have two practically octogenarians running for president.
Right.
One prosecuting a war by proxy. The other just a straight up nut job, convicted criminal, narcissist, sexist, sexual assaulter. I mean, it really. It is. We got to look at that, y'all, and see what enables that. And first of all, the people who voted for him enabled it, and then second of all, a lot of the media wants Trump back in because he is the moment by moment Bronco chase in the flesh, and that sells.
Austin is watching from Dubai. I take it I know he was on his way to Dubai, but he says for all of her anti-Trump talk, Haley may still endorse Trump. This party loyalty over country loyalty we see all the time, right?
Yeah, we do, but I think it would be really, really difficult. For Nikki to go back after all she said, I think it would be difficult to do.
Oh, many said the same thing about Marco Rubio, Ted Cruz. I mean, this guy talked disparagingly about Marco Rubio's wife. He accused Ted Cruz's father of being complicit in the murder of JFK. But both of them.
No. Let me correct you. That's not what he did. Nobody did that. There's a picture of Ted Cruz's father with Lee Harvey Oswald. And when people asked Ted, including Trump, I give him credit. All Trump said, like the media said, explain the picture. What is this picture about? And Ted's response was, my father didn't kill JFK. That's not what we asked you, Ted. Ted shot himself on it. Ted was stupid. Why is your daddy in the picture with Lee Harvey Oswald, Ted? And he still has not answered that question. Nobody accused Ted's father killing JFK. That's just, we want to know what he's doing in the picture. But when you respond to someone, hey, Stacey, what time you want me on? Let it be known in the morning. Mark, I wasn't involved in JFK's assassination. Wait a minute, I asked you that, Stacey. You saying more than I asked you, which makes you look suspicious. That's literally what he did. Y'all want to hear something funny? I'll give you a quick funny story. So, I giving unsolicited political advice. So when Beto was running against Ted for Senate a few years ago, and we were all somewhere, I think it was the NAACP convention, and there's nothing worse than talking directly to a candidate and getting the staff upset by saying things they don't want you to say to the candidate. And we're off the record. It's not an interview. I said, hey, man, come here. He said, Mark, what do you think I should do? I said, it worked with Trump and the media because when they raised the question about that picture with Lee Harvey Oswald, Beto, Ted had to drop out the race. He dropped out literally within 48 hours because the media started asking, but he kept saying, my father, he said, we didn't ask you if your father killed him. Ted, what was your father's relationship with Lee Harvey Oswald? And he drops out the race. So I said, Beto, bring up the picture. Ask him. Don't say he killed JFK. Just ask him. What is the picture about? So I'm talking so you imagine Beto's in front of me. I'm talking to him. And behind Beto is the campaign staff. And they're doing like this. No, because they didn't want that controversy. They didn't want him to be caught up in that, which I thought was stupid. That is a logical question. If that's not a small thing that your father was hanging out with Lee Harvey Oswald. And don't even get me started about what we know about him. Huh? So, you know, I mean, you want to rent a race, but you know, they didn't do it. We were on the air one night on XM. And Dick Gregory and I were in studio. And when we're doing a live radio show, sometimes yeah, I mean that's a salacious headline, but we know that's not what happened. The question still is what, and what's interesting, he still has never answered the question.
Right.
We still want to know, like you bring them. I am dying to know what was the nature of that relationship. We were on the air one night, and it was an 08, Bush and Kerry. And when you get live calls on the air, you know, the calls come in, and every now and then somebody would call the show, Make It Plain, and say, "Hey, I want to talk to Mark and Dick off the air." Now, a lot of hosts don't take those calls; they think they're prank calls, but we always took them because it might be a tip, you know. And I never failed. Whenever somebody called me and said they wanted to talk to me off the air with some important information they needed to share that they couldn't share publicly, and it ended up being okay. So I get on the phone. There's two brothers on the phone, black men, who told me that they, and this is not the first time I've told this story. They told me that they were in the same drug treatment facility as George W. Bush when he went AWOL from the Texas Air National Guard. I'm like, what? So now, mind you, at this stage in my life, I'm you know, a little bit more mature, and I'm trying to be intelligent, or I think I am.
Right.
This is happening at the same time, Stacey, as Dan Rather is losing his job.
Oh, okay.
And remember, the story was true, but Karl Rove set Dan up with a fake letter that CBS didn't vet. So he was AWOL, but this was a fake letter. So it was a masterful manipulation.
Wow.
Now, I'll make it plain. I don't have CBS resources, right? So I'm not going to run out here with this. This has to be vetted. These dudes need to be talked to. I don't have them resources. So I called the DNC, some folk we know over there. So look at y'all. Y'all got the resources to do this. I'm not going to get involved in this. Got these brothers. They say they were in the drug treatment facility with W. And you know what Kerry's people said? They said, well, you know, Mark, and they swift boating the hell out of Kerry. Remember, he's being swift boated. So they said, well, you know, Mark, we don't want to get down in the mud with them. That to me was the first time I'd ever heard this enacted. They go low, we go high. It wasn't said in those words. I was like, y'all crazy. This is politics. This is blood sport. They're wiping you out. And I'm telling you, and I'm saying, I'm not vouching for it because I don't know, but you got the money and the resources and the Oppo research to go and see if these cats are real. And they wouldn't do it. So I'm saying all that to say that you know, when questions like that are raised, you gotta follow them up and see what it's all about. And with Ted, I mean, that's what Trump did, and Trump does a lot to play the dozens. I'm gonna say this though, and I know we gotta go. I want everybody to think about this today, and maybe they can give you an answer tomorrow. Trump loves play the dozens, right? He loves to mess with people, little hands, Marco, and all that, you know, tiny choice, make fun, call your wife ugly. And now he's clowning Nikki Haley. Where's her husband? Where's her husband? Which is a dirty dig because the word on the street is the rumors in South Carolina is that Nikki's over the years has cheated on her husband, right? So we know what he's doing. Have y'all noticed? He ain't saying, this is really interesting to me. He has not played the dozens or messed with Fonnie Willis at all, even with the scandal. I was waiting on him to say, look at Fonnie sleeping with the prosecutor. He hadn't said a word. Isn't that interesting? What is it about that situation? And who, so we know he don't take advice, but whoever's told him, don't open your mouth about Fonnie Willis, he's listening to. If you notice that, Stacey.
Yeah, well, early on where there was one of his attorneys alleged that she was having an affair with a gang member, and then that quickly went away. We haven't heard anything more about it. So,
yeah, but I mean, with the current situation, she's in court defending herself. what she did, I mean, beyond compare.
Mm-hmm.
Fonnie spoke up for every black woman in the country. I mean, really, what she did, and on the same day, Tish, and Tish has that. I know Tish. I love her. She's a friend, but she has that ominous voice, and she talks like this.
Yes.
And and can you imagine somebody talking to you in that voice, telling you to take out the trash? I mean, you're gonna take out the trash. The art of the steal. Take out the trash. Okay. Wisdom.
What, right.
So, but Fonnie, it's just interesting to me in this current scandal, which is rife for his foolishness. You literally are clowning Nikki Haley about her marriage.
Mm-hmm.
And now you have this sister in this situation, which, I mean, honestly, you talk about elephants in the room today. The Willis Wade situation is not ideal. There is a level of embarrassment to it, for us and for the case. And I don't think anybody can be in denial about that. This ain't the hiccup folks would have predicted or were looking for. Now, does that mean she should be disqualified? No. Does that take them off the hook? No. But anybody, I want to get in all this. Anybody know anything about Atlanta? And a few other things. If you really break, you get it. You understand it. See, and in Wade's the prosecutor, as Roy Barnes, the former governor, testified. Wade's only prosecutor because nobody else wanted to take the job.
And that
Nobody
was
else had
so key.
had
I'm
the
glad you
courage.
brought that up. That was
Nobody had the courage.
extremely key. That was key.
Nobody had the
The
courage.
fact that the former governor testified that he was offered that job first.
And then in terms of the
turned it down.
relationship, I'm going to say this too in her defense, and hopefully in defense of a lot of sisters. She talked about the demands of the job and the extreme loneliness. I mean, you're talking about professional black women. I asked somebody a couple of years ago, a black woman, how they felt about Ketanji Brown Jackson being married to a white man. And this very prominent black woman, and she said, Mark, it's not ideal, and I don't like it necessarily. But what Ketanji has said to some of us is this, and when you hear this, y'all, you got to hear this. As Dick you say, hear me good. When you are a professional black woman and you reach that level, you are a judge and you're an appeals court judge and you're going on Supreme Court. There already is a shortage, a mathematical shortage, because of white supremacy, of available black men to average folk. And then when you get to that level, then the pool shrinks even more. And I get that. So when you're somebody in Fonnie's position, that's tough. And then you're in Atlanta. I'm just gonna leave that there for a minute.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
You know what I'm trying to say? And then here's so those of you get what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
Now again, it's not ideal. I probably would said, hey sis, y'all probably don't need to do that. But on the other hand, I get it. And then there was self-correction. That's over.
Right.
We about business now. And y'all trying to distract. We about business. We getting this dude. So
and one of the hardest things to do is to have a relationship, break up, and still be able to work together that way. And like you said, I say that because what you just said, they just decided we are about business.
Right. No, and it's very mature. It's an adjustment. And that's a good thing. But no, Fonnie's the truth. She a bad sister. She handled her business and she spoke, I think, for a lot of black women the other day.
Daniela Pierre writes, Atlanta, if you know, you know.
Thank
Absolutely.
you, man. Y'all know. More y'all know. Y'all know. We ain't even got to say it. Y'all know what the deal is in Atlanta.
Hey, real quick before we go, I wanted to raise this issue, Mark. I know this is a totally switch from politics. I know you probably don't do a lot of talking when it comes to entertainment and particularly this type of entertainment. But Chris Brown had posted a a barrage of angry Instagram stories over the weekend in which he claimed that the National Basketball Association had invited him to play in their celebrity all-star game, only to disinvite him later over objections from sponsors. He says, I was asked by the NBA to play in the all-star game, only for them to call later and say they couldn't do it because of Ruffles, their sponsor. Ruffles, of course, has denied that they were the ones who said no. Um, and Chris says that the NBA then invited him to sit courtside and he refused. He says that I am tired of paying for something that happened 15 years ago. I was only 17 years old. Speaking of the incident with Rihanna, which he's and Tameeka Mallory had made some points too. You know, she on both sides. She says, you know, you can't blame the sponsor if they don't want to be associated with you. But at the same time, she also seems to indicate that perhaps it is time to give this young man some slack. Now, I'm going to say this: everybody knows how much I'm 1,000% Rihanna. Rihanna's my girl and all that. And what he did was absolutely horrific. There's no excuse for what he did. Um, but 15 years, people who commit murder don't pay that long a price. And she, more importantly, she has forgiven him. She has moved past that. And this again, I appreciate and understand what he's saying. He was 17 years old. He was young. He was stupid. He had anger issues at 17. The celebrity came fast and furious at him. He was, under a lot of pressure. There's not an excuse to put his hands on her, because I'll tell you what, like I said, Rihanna was my girl. Had I ran into Chris in 2009, as Bernie says, some furniture probably would have been moving. But but
Yeah,
but I
right.
get his point as well, Mark. When when do we let this young man live?
Well, and I have Tameeka's a dear friend. We've not talked yet today. We talk every day, so I've not seen her comment. Um, but let me just say this: we also got to pick and choose what battles we fight. Um, the NBA Celebrity All Star Game is Chris Brown playing in that game. Anybody else playing that game is not necessarily a battle I want to engage. I mean, we also got to think about what is important versus what isn't. So if you, um, there's also the road to rehabilitation, your actions, um, your service to the goodwill of humankind is what you should be doing to show that you have matured and that you would not do that again, and that there's some um, um, for lack of a better word, I mean some penance, some innocence in that. Going to play in an NBA Celebrity All-Star game is not an act of absolution, but at the same time, we're Black, and we live in a society where we are disproportionately criminalized and incarcerated. So, every year for the past few years, I've interviewed Maulana Karenga for Kwanzaa, because he is the founder of Kwanzaa. What other authority is there on Kwanzaa? And he's
Right.
still with us, God bless him. And some of my sisters get mad at me. Oh, he did this. I said, but then we have to ask ourselves, now, we can't have it both ways. We can't fight to get people out of prison and re-enter them in society and be reformed. And then for certain people say, no, they got to be punished forever. You follow what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We gotta figure that out. So how do we choose the ones, because our baby's fathers, our uncles, our parents, they get put away and then they got to come home. And so what do we do? Do we say, no, you can't come home and you'll never be forgiven, or just what? So we gotta deal with that. We have to figure it out. So yeah, I think that, again, two things can be true. At some point, Chris should not have to pay that price forever, especially if the victim has forgiven him. But by the same token, give us something a little more worthwhile to get upset about.
Right.
We are trying to stop a war. The NBA Celebrity All-Star Game, dude, you don't need that.
No.
Chris Brown don't need to be in this NBA Celebrity All-Star. The NBA needs celebrities. You don't need the NBA. You don't play in the NBA. So, that's kind of how I come down on that, Stacey.
Yeah. And Power 96 mentions that. He says, I fought against the Klan when I was 19. I am 49 now. I was charged and found not guilty. That charge still comes up after I served 20 years in the military. That's what you mentioned. This is what Black folks face. These things come up. They never let you live it down. I think you said it best, though, and we'll leave it at how you made it plain. How about that?
Right.
Always a pleasure to have you, Mark. Always a pleasure.
To be here.
We appreciate you so much, and we appreciate all of you for staying in tune with Let It Be Known and the Black Press of America. We'll see you again tomorrow.
Someone stopping my door. Well, okay.
I'll help you understand. For one, Representative Phillips, strikes me as a little ironic that you're going to say to me in my face as a Black American who doesn't have the option of someone that the United Nations and the international community having intervened on my behalf to create an entire country for my people who have zero options of some place to flee, who have been living in an apartheid state of our own in the United States of America, which has the 25% of the world's prison population that was disproportionately filled with my people, who was reported this week, substantively make all of the paint and slave labor products in the United States of America so we can compete with China and the rest of the world. The idea that you're looking at me and saying that I don't have empathy and can't open my heart to the psychic
I said
idea.
Progressive, Brianna, I do have empathy. That's what I'm asking for.
I am a progressive, so I'm speaking to you as a progressive, but also as a Black progressive. I have enormous empathy. Wait a minute. I have enormous empathy for the reasons why Jewish people want a Jewish state. I talk about this on the podcast a lot. There is a big part of me that says, oh, I get it, because I do not feel safe in the United States of America, not just me as an individual, but statistically as an aggregate. There's not a metric in the world that you can look at that says that this is a good place for Black Americans to be, that Black Americans are faring well in the United States of America. And I take your point, but it's also true that I know you and I are sitting here as two people who are not Christian in a predominantly Christian state. And there are Christians in America who make this very similar argument about America that it seems to me many people make about Israel, which is, oh, this is a Christian nation. And if immigration trends change and suddenly it does not become as much of a Christian nation, that we should rig the immigrant population to maintain the national character of the United States of America. We call that Christian nationalism, and we think that that's a bigoted principle, and that we should not be picking and choosing who comes to this country to maintain some kind of ethnic or religious character that benefits the existing majority. We say, as Americans, we value pluralism and that every kind of person brings their own benefit, and that we should protect the least of these and have laws that protect minorities, because we value being a nation where minorities can be saved. Not that we have to rig the system so that we are majorities so that we can then dominate over the rest, right? So it strikes me as much as I empathize. When you tell the story of Jewish ships full of Jewish people after the Holocaust being turned away, I've spoken at length on this podcast about how disgusted I was to discover that Otto Frank and Frank's father application was turned away, and how close they came to be able to immigrate to America. I'm disgusted by it. But the question is, why should the actions of an anti-Semitic America and an anti-Semitic Europe be paid for by the people of Palestine who had absolutely nothing to do with the horrors of Holocaust?
I mean, Brianna, first, let me